Red Curtain Addict, and it's so excited to see you tonight. I am wearing my Gatsby attire because tonight we're talking all about one of my favorite events. It is a period piece, immersive theater experience that happens all around the time period of the 20s and the 30s with some Gatsby themes throughout. So I'm excited to welcome on Elizabeth, who is a part of this exciting event called Gatsby Summer Afternoon. Elizabeth, hey, good to see you.
Hi, nice to see you too.
I love that we're both decked out, like just on a casual, afternoon. We're in our Gatsby attire.
Hey, if there's an ever excuse to dress up, sign me up.
I know you actually love you're in this kind of period attire a lot. I think you always just look so fantastic. Look at your sweet hat. I love that.
It's a sickness. I fell in love with hats and I collect them now. It's great.
Hats are such a great thing. I love it, and it's just fun to kind of go back in time. And it's so crazy to think about the 20s was now 100 years ago, which is just hard to believe.
Yeah, it's like when I started doing all of this, the 20s were like 80 years ago, and now it's like, oh wow, it's really 100 years ago, and we're right back in the same place, emerging from a pandemic, and may our next decade of 20s roar with the creative flourishes that the 1920s did.
Totally. So true. Well said. I like that. Well, Elizabeth, I want to tell everybody about this event because I've been a few times and I've seen you there several times. You have a special connection with the event. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the Art Deco Society of California, because this is the presenter of the Gatsby Summer Afternoon. So tell us a little bit more about your role with them and also about the organization itself.
Sure. So the Art Deco Society of California was established in the early 1980s as a group of enthusiasts that were mostly focused on preserving old buildings. So we are so lucky in the Bay Area to have, and throughout California really, to have these amazing theaters and department stores and so on that were built during the golden age of Hollywood. And instead of tearing them down, it's kind of great to see these buildings become repurposed or given new life. And so the Art Deco Society was established to work on preserving all of that. Sort of projects like the Paramount Theater in Oakland and the Fox Theater in Oakland and the Oakland Floral Depot that became the restaurant Flora that's now becoming another restaurant. I think opening later this year, but also many buildings throughout San Francisco, and sort of saying, how can we keep this beautiful legacy of a time when form met function in a really elegant way, instead of just letting it all collapse and putting something new in its place. And so there's a lot of original recycling and reuse, repurpose. And through that, people got excited about the idea of capturing the imagination of what if we started throwing these kinds of parties that these spaces were designed to support. And from that, the Gatsby Summer Afternoon, which is an afternoon lawn party, was born, as was the Art Deco Preservation Ball, which is another annual event hosted by the Society that honors people who are restoring everything from apartment buildings to gas stations to office buildings to murals.
Wow. And you actually live in one of these spaces, right? I got to visit you for a birthday a few weeks ago, and you live in a pretty cool spot. Who lived in the apartment complex that you live in San Francisco?
I do. I live in a building that was built as an extended stay hotel supporting artists, and so it's had many famous residents. Louis Armstrong was here, Vivian Vance was here. My favorite is on Frida Kahlo's marriage certificate for her second marriage to Diego Rivera. She cites the Alexander Hamilton Hotel, which is now the building that I live in, as her address in San Francisco. So it's super cool.
That's super cool just to live in such a historical place. And I love that you guys took it to the next step of like, okay, well, let's relive those moments. Let's celebrate them. Let's also, the architecture is such a great thing, but the spirit was the people that was inside of these places, right? And what you're doing, these attires. And so this kind of really, it sounds like the idea of Gatsby Summer Afternoon came from this idea. Tell us a little bit more about the place that it's held. So it's in Oakland, and it has this beautiful white home where you think Gatsby would live. Tell us more about this place.
So the Gatsby Summer Afternoon is held at the Dunsmuir-Hellman Historic Estate. And the Dunsmuir Mansion was built by, I believe he was a coal magnate, who unfortunately died very young. It was supposed to be his summer home with his wife, and both he and his wife, Dunsmuir was his last name, and I'm blanking on his first name. I'm so sorry. Died in 1899 and 1901 and never really got to live there. And so then the estate was bought by the Hellman family. And that became their summer home in the Oakland Hills. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting with a wonderful lawn, and they kind of kept adding to it. And so there are some neat little outbuildings and so on. And then, of course, the house itself, which is this beautiful white mansion. And it's very much what you would imagine the space that Jay Gatsby to live in to be like, where it's rolling hills and a gorgeous lawn and wooded. And so you get dappled sunlight and just a lot of space. And you feel really protected from the surrounding city. You kind of forget that San Francisco's across the bay and Oakland's, like it's right off the highway. And then suddenly you're in this secluded world that's just really, really relaxing, really beautiful. They host a huge number of events. They like to host weddings. They also host their own evening in white lawn party. It's all managed by Oakland Parks and Rec at this point. After the family, I think the wife died in the 50s, and then they wanted it to become a treasure for an area that had given them a lot.
Wow. I walked through the house, and there's stunning stained glass work throughout the home. And someone told me it was by Tiffany's. Is that correct?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head. One of my great shames is that like in the 10 years that I've been participating in the Gatsby Summer Afternoon, I've never gotten to tour the house.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I will give you a tour, my friend, because it's stunning.
One of these years, it's one of those, like, my day there is so long because it starts with a rehearsal, and then you set up your picnic, and then you say hi to all the people, and then you perform, and then you learn how to play croquet, and then
you're busy.
It's 5 p.m. and
you got tea to catch, you got picnics, champagne to drink, all the things. So it's a hard day. I get it. Well, let's talk about this performance too, because I want to know more about like really what made you want to join this community, because what you're talking about is people who also celebrate the same passions that you have around this love of the 20s and these period pieces. So tell me kind of what drove you to joining this great society.
A lot of things, actually. And it was a very stepwise process. So I have been a dancer all my life, and I had a dance teacher growing up who absolutely adored old Hollywood and classic Broadway musicals. And so in our summer dance camps, we watched like every Fred and Ginger movie ever made. And then Busby Berkeley number after Busby Berkeley number. And so I fell in love with that style of dance, and I fell in love with that style of music actually through my mom, whose favorite composer was George Gershwin.
My heart.
She was a much better musician than I will ever be, but
same.
But like I grew up hearing jazz greats and all of the songs that began in the 20s, and sort of the history of American music as an art form and American dance as an art form, which was through tap. I loved rhythm. I loved tap dancers. I love that it's a blend of a bunch of different places. And a bunch of different musical traditions. I think that's an incredibly beautiful thing. And so I found this group of dancers who want to recreate Busby Berkeley production numbers, and I could like live out all of my cog in a kaleidoscope fantasies.
I love it. And it's so exciting to I remember moving to San Francisco from Oklahoma, and I thought I was the only one that liked certain things, like old music, old movies, opera, and I just always was kind of that one friend that just kind of did my own thing because I liked different things from my group of friends. And when I moved to San Francisco, I realized, oh my gosh, there's so many people that have the same interests, that you can find these little pockets throughout the city. And you get to, live these fantasies, like you mentioned, out through dance and song and afternoon with Gatsby, which is awesome.
Yeah. And so I joined the Deco Bells, and I was and that was how I went to Gatsby for the first time. And I just fell in love with being there, and it's, as you say, like friends who create these things, what the Art Deco Society provides is a skeleton. They provide a dance floor, and they provide great music, and they provide a floor show and a couple of contests. And then everybody brings their own picnic infrastructure. And so you see this community make the space to really be present with other people and enjoy a wonderful afternoon together.
Yes.
And it's such a compelling thing where it's like, I live in the Tenderloin, everybody runs around in their athleisure because it's practical. And it's nice to be like, I'm going to get dressed up, and being dressed up is going to make me slow down a little bit.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
I think we can all use a little bit of that. Like, I'm going to just enjoy sunshine and champagne and great music and talk to other people and hear their stories.
Of, where they've been, what they've been doing over the past year. And I think that's something I loved about this event, because I want to ask specifically, like, when you could put it into terms, what is Gatsby Summer Afternoon? For me, it was an escape. It was, as there was not really phones around, I felt like I was completely thrown back truly into the 20s. People are decked out into the attire. They're in they're almost in character. You're like in this immersive scene, and you're like, am I at a movie set? This is crazy. And you just want to be a part of it. So you put your phone down, and you're like, I'm always on a screen, right? Let's go dance. Let's go listen to music. Let's talk to someone new. Let's learn those stories, like you mentioned. And so for those that haven't been, that's my experience. But what would you say, the Gatsby Summer Afternoon encompasses? What would people expect when they drive up and bring their picnic to this exciting afternoon?
That is such a hard question to answer, because it's everything that you said.
Everything.
But it's like itself is the truth, but it's also, I think, like, to show up to it for the first time, you get to feel like you've walked onto a movie set, and you have at your fingertips this treasure trove of people who just are eager to share. They're eager to share what they've made. They're eager to share, like, if you go in, there's always vintage autos. And if you go talk to the people who have brought their autos, they're like so excited to tell you about how they met this one guy who 3D printed their 1930s handle that was like,
right, to crank up the motor and
yeah, and like the restoration work and the creative work, and it's a place where I think in so much of the world we feel very distant from people who make stuff. Like, there's somebody who posts their TikTok or their Instagram or whatever. There's somebody that we watch on a stage, and the Gatsby Summer Afternoon is really unique in that you're in among all of these creators, and you get to create that event right along with everybody, because every person there has brought their experience and their picnic and their love and curiosity of this time period to create a world of just enjoying amazing music, amazing dancing, amazing sunshine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And something I love about it too is there's really no set schedule. Like, don't show up and expect this like show. When you walk in, you are in the show. There is not like take your seat, sit here. There is none of that. You get to come in costume, right? Bring your picnics and have fun with like bringing maybe some tea sets or little sandwiches or do some research on Pinterest and go find what would they eat in Gatsby days and just really just go all out, because I truly think like that's how you really get the best experience, is when you just fully embrace it. So this is one of my favorite parts too, Elizabeth, is that when you come up to the parking lot, you park your car, but then like you don't even just walk up, which you can, but you can get picked up in old automobiles or wagons with horses, and then they take you through this beautiful little valley and you see Gatsby's house and you're like, oh my gosh, it's incredible.
Yeah. And it's, like you just see people meeting each other. You see people strolling around. I love looking at all of the different picnics because there are always people who are like, I just want to be here with my family. And they bring a basket and a blanket and a bottle of lemonade and a bottle of champagne and some tea sandwiches and some fruit. And then there are people where like they're former set designers, and so they pick out a theme that they want to do and plan for 6 months to do these elaborate like one year there was somebody who they had a rose petal themed china set from the early 20th century, and they built their whole picnic around it. There were some people who had Scottish heritage, and so they're like, we're going to be the Scottish picnic, and they had like Scotch eggs that you just go and talk to people and they tell you about what they loved and what was true for their family. And it's always somebody's like grandmother's story. Like you hear about this is my grandmother's china that I'm sharing, not just with the people who know me, but with people who don't.
Absolutely. I mean, really, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can tell who's planned and who just got their ticket last week. You're just like, oh, I see. You've been waiting for this moment, because there's like canopies and everybody's like perfectly dressed in the same colors, and it's just so fun to see. And to me, it's almost a similarity of going to go with me on this. It's like going to a crafts fair, like you mentioned, where people bring things that they've made and you can go up to the tables and talk to them. But there's really no trade that happens here. You can still just go up and talk to people about their picnics. It's like, tell me about this. Where did you find this? And people have been collecting these pieces for years from their families or travels. And that's what I really love about this event too, is it opens up for conversation. There is no feeling of like, can I talk to this stranger? That is the entire point, is to just meet new people and feel free to walk up and just start a casual chat, and you have something in common, most likely. And right, it's your love for the period, or you live nearby, or you love music or dance. It's just such a cool, I've never been to something like this that's had such a resonance of community coming out of it, that it was just really, really special. And I want to talk about the costumes though, Elizabeth, because that's obviously something that makes this event fun. And we're kind of wearing our Gatsby style, and Parker and I, we've shopped, where we go is Haight Ashbury, because they have so many fun shops there. And this is actually something I found from Haight Ashbury that is truly from the 20s. So it's really fun to actually go, not just go to your Amazon, like, hey, what do they have really quickly, but just find these old pieces and wear something of the style. But I'm curious, like, tell us about some of the fun things that happen around the costumes at this event.
So we encourage everybody to come. There's a dress code for the event, which is basically like, please don't come in a trucker hat and a beat up t-shirt and jeans and sneakers. It's meant to be like, be elegant, take the opportunity to figure out what it would be like to be yourself in this other time? And so it's also a summer afternoon party. And so we all think of like the Great Gatsby film with all of
Yeah.
the lavish evening parties with
The
all of the beads
flappers.
and the feather boas and
Right.
all of that. And this is much softer. It's an afternoon party. It's a lawn party. And so we encourage everybody to come in, you know, light colors and sort of soft prints and so on. And there's a mix of styles. I think the best vintage blog I ever read was like, when you want to start dressing vintage, know who you are. If you are a Jordan Baker sporty type, don't go for the thing with 20 pounds of embroidery and 85 ruffles on it, because you will feel like the clothes are wearing you. Look for palazzo pants and a long tank top or something like that. Meanwhile, if you're the person who wants to be wearing like 80 pounds of sequins every day, then by all means, ruffles for days. Have at.
Yeah.
And so like I have been collecting 20s and 30s pieces for a while, and I love wearing true vintage in a place where people are going to understand what it is. And I love that I have a place to wear all of my warm weather vintage clothes, because it can get pretty hot out there. So I'm a big fan of the like lightweight, light colored fabrics. Cotton is great, linen is great, rayon is great. Polyester is less great.
Yeah, I think Parker wore some polyester one year and he's like, I am so hot, because you dance, you're moving around, you're in the sunshine. So I do agree, light is better.
And you know, like I love wearing a hat because you carry your own shade.
See, there you go. Or a nice parasol, right? Like a nice.
Oh
you
yeah.
can even bring one of those.
Yeah, you go up to Chinatown and get the beautiful painted paper parasols.
Seriously.
And you're like, cool, portable shade structure. Life is great.
Done.
I also really love that we get a lot of people who understand that fashion recycles itself over and over and over again. And so the 60s redid the 20s, and the 80s redid the 40s, and the 70s redid the 30s, and then the 90s also redid the 30s. So it's really easy to find at like even thrift stores these floral print bias cut 90s dresses that I love to wear for Gatsby, because I can put that and a long beaded necklace on and feel like I'm ready, and it's simple, and I don't care if somebody spills something on me. Like I recognize I'm going to be on a lawn and I'm going to be walking. And so my husband Sam similarly loves his true vintage pieces, but a lot of them are made out of wool. And that can, sometimes you check the weather and you're like, oh good, high of 75, the vintage wool can come out. And sometimes you go high of 95. Today is the day for the seersucker that I found from Dasse Bank.
There you go. And I love these parades that they do too. Like you get to see everybody. I mean, you guys, it's crazy. There's like a milkman, there's swimmers. I mean, you don't have to think about just a flapper gal. Like you have to think like the standard Gatsby. Like people are so creative and they come into these characters, and you can do the same. If, like you mentioned, Elizabeth, like have you ever wondered what you'd be in the 20s? And you're like, I think I'd be a singer, or I think I'd be a milkman. I don't know. Just go with it. Like go find an attire. It's fun. But then you mentioned too earlier when we were chatting about this, that there's going to be a parade this year, because sometimes there's contests for best dressed. But you know, they want to open it up and be like, you know what, let's just celebrate everybody coming out this year. Let's do a fun parade and show off the attire.
Yeah. And we've always done sort of a fashion parade, but it was always sort of contest oriented. And what we decided as a board was that we have such an interesting mix of people coming to our events now, that it's not just the vintage collectors who are restoring things. It's also people who have found vintage patterns, who've made their own ensembles and absolutely want to show that off. And share that, or people who have upcycled something that they found at community thrift or Goodwill and are like, cool, the sleeve on this is wrong, so I'm going to take my like 80s does 20s or 80s does 40s does 20s dress, and the sleeves are these weird balloon sleeves, and I'm going to just cut them off and make little flutter sleeves. And they show up in that, and like, why not celebrate and all of the different things that people bring.
Mm-hmm.
last year we had Last year we did a virtual Instagram version of it, and we had this one couple that made tennis ensembles from the 20s, and then it was like super smoky, and so then they did indoor tennis in their living room, and they had all of these great pictures on their Instagram of like playing indoor racquetball in their heads and their white dresses, and it was adorable and wonderful. And so fun. You know, like the sky's the limit, really. You know, stay away from black. You won't have fun that way.
Yes, I can hear that. And you know, speaking of some of the awards, you know, you've won an award at one of these Gatsby events, and you've been Miss Art Deco. Tell us about that. Like, what does it mean to be Miss Art Deco, and how do you achieve this amazing title?
Miss Art Deco is like the most amazing thing that has probably, maybe not the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me, but right up there.
That's so cool.
So Miss Art Deco is chosen every year from among the Deco Belles, mostly for being a volunteer who's committed to the organization. So like my year, when she's always voted in by the previous Miss Art Decos and the board of the Art Deco Society. And so my year, I had done a whole bunch of performances as a Deco Belle at a number of charity events, and I had like helped out at all of these parties we have where we mail envelopes with little invitations to people and stuff like that. And I think I volunteered as an usher, and I also choreographed some of the routines that the Deco Belles performed.
Wow.
Our reigning Miss Art Deco, Meredith Sherwin, has done a huge amount in sort of the architecture bent, and had like designed our programs and so on, because everything that gets done for Gatsby, other than like the band and a very small number of other roles, is mostly done by volunteers. Our board are all volunteers. Our organizers are all volunteers. The Deco Belles are all volunteering for the day, and we volunteer our rehearsal time. We volunteer our choreographic time. And so we like to reward that by selecting somebody who's really shown that she cares a lot about the history of the Art Deco era and the future of the organization.
Very cool. And so they basically voted you in and saw you do all these amazing things, and it was like, okay, Miss Elizabeth is Miss Art Deco. I mean, I saw these great photos of you getting the sash and the bouquet and the crown, and it's this whole thing that happens every year to someone that has really shown up for the society, and that's just so amazing. I love seeing the fun dances you guys do. I mean, to be an Art Deco Belle, this sounds so like so fun, right? So tell us more about like kind of what does it even take if you know, for those that may not be familiar with that, how do you even become a Deco
Belle? So you become a Deco Belle honestly through volunteering. I became a Deco Belle because I was a can-can dancer, and I did a performance in Union Square that was a dance through the ages, that started with the Barbary Coast and went through the present to introduce a new show at the Westfield. And that was how I met our director, Lori Gordon. And she was like, wait, can you do the stuff that we do? I'm like, oh yeah, I love the 20s. I was in The Boyfriend when I was in high school, and then did another tap number based on it. And
you're like, I've been waiting my whole life for this, so yes, I'm ready for Deco Belle.
Yeah, I'm like, please, like, let me live out all of these fantasies. But we find people through a lot of different places. We found people who work in vintage clothing stores. We find people who come to events and just, we find people who are a friend of a friend because most of us are swing dancers or performers or have some other connection with this era outside of just the Gatsby Summer Afternoon. And we go, oh yeah, I met this person and she was talking to me about how much she loved Irving Berlin. And I think she'd really have a great time with this event. And she's going to love dressing up and care about the era and so on. And so you get to be a part of a group of women who all support each other in creating a whole that really is greater than the sum of its parts. You have to be kind of egoless, actually, I think, because the choreography style, especially for the big events, is very oriented around creating stage pictures and creating formations and patterns. It lives in the realm of the Rockettes, who, among other chorus lines, were sort of an emotional response to manufacturation, that's a word. Manufacturing, assembly lines, interchangeable parts. And we're like, what if we do this with people? And what kinds of art and pictures and tableaus can we make? And how do we make those living? And so a lot of what we look for in Deco Bells are people who want to bring all of their individual sparkle and history and background and create something that's bigger than any of us.
That's super cool. Oh my gosh. You guys, all the ladies are so kind. I've met a lot of them and see them. What's fun too is I've met so many people from this afternoon at Gatsby or Gatsby Summer Afternoon, flipped it backwards, where I see them out in the city and I see them at, other festivals like the Dickens Fair that happens. I've seen them at, when I went to go see Cosmo Alley Cats, which is one of my favorite groups, and Radio Gatsby. And you kind of just find each other in these spots and you're like, hey, I met you at this amazing afternoon. And so it's a great way to just meet new people and generally. And these Deco Bells are just such kinds of people. I think it's maybe I should be one, Elizabeth. I don't know.
I don't know. How's your Charleston?
Right? Dun, 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 dun. Okay. I'll show you later. But I just have a question, for those that haven't been, and you being the co-director of programming, what would be maybe 3 tips to give someone as they're coming to this event, just to have that best experience? What would you say are the 3 tips to give them that?
I would say, well, what I want to say is don't overthink it.
Yeah, that's a good tip. People are like, oh my gosh, do I have to have vintage, or do I have to be a dancer, or do I have to know these things? You guys, I had no vintage clothes. I am not a dancer. And I just know that I love old music and old movies. And I was like, sign me up. And I had the best time. So yes, don't overthink it. You don't have to be a certain level of anything to enjoy it.
Yeah, I would say don't overthink it. Be curious. And don't be afraid to say hi. There's, I think it can feel really intimidating if you walk into this place for the first time and everybody is really well dressed and everybody seems to know each other. And the truth is that a lot of people know each other, but just as many of them are meeting each other for the first time, even if they've been going for years and years and years and years. So compliments are an amazing opener. So don't be afraid at all to just be like, your car is so amazing. Can you tell me more about it? Or I really love your outfit. And people are going to be so happy to hear that. And then they're going to want to talk to you. If I'm allowed to add a 4th one, hydrate.
Yeah.
It gets hot out there.
What was it?
What?
What was that? What was the 4th one?
Hydrate.
Yes. And that doesn't mean champagne. It means drink some water.
I mean, it doesn't not mean champagne, but Trader Joe's sells lemonade in these wonderful self-resealing bottles that have a very vintage looking label, and it's sparkly lemonade, and it is the perfect thing to just kind of have with you.
See, there you go, Trader Joe's. A little drop of a little sponsorship in here. I love that. That's a great thing. Yeah, I think those are great things. Don't overthink it. Embrace the curiosity of it. Don't expect a certain cadence, I would say, to add to that. Again, like, it's just an open afternoon. And yeah, go up and meet new people. I've met so many incredible people like yourself at these events, and it's just been so much fun. And you can bring your kids. I see lots of little kids running around. I see all ages. So this is not for a certain even age demo. It's really for anyone and everyone. And I hope I get to see everyone there. Both Elizabeth and I get to see Elizabeth perform and see these incredible musicians that they do all this fun music. And they even have the kind of the style of the singing where it's a little, hello, my baby, hello, my darling. Like, it's kind of like nasally, you know? And it's just so great, you guys. I'm telling you, hands down, one of my favorite Bay Area events. And it's happening on September 12th in Oakland. And there are still tickets available. So this does sell out pretty quickly. I remember having to do a deal on the side to get a ticket one year. I'm like, hey, are you going to use that ticket? Can you call me if you don't? So it's serious. So get your tickets pretty soon. If you want to find out more about this, it's at the Art Deco Society of California.org. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for telling us more about this. I was like, I can't do it myself. I need to go to the expert, which is you. And it's just been so much fun to hear your experience and kind of how you came to it. So thank you for joining us this afternoon.
I was so thrilled. Can I plug one extra event?
Do it.
On the subject of first timers, on Sunday, this coming Sunday, we are having a How to Gatsby pre-event at the Alameda Air Museum, Alameda Naval Air Museum, Alameda Air Museum. And that is over in Alameda. It's near Alameda Point. It's a converted naval base. And what that afternoon will be is a series of lectures that are kind of designed, like short lectures, 10-minute lectures, that are designed to introduce people to, like, here's how to upcycle and here's how to do your hair.
Cool.
Because not everybody is going to cut their hair into a 20s bob. My actual hair is waist length. I'm like, I'm not cutting it. I'll figure out how to style it. It's fine. And we have a talk on how to set up your picnic, and also one on appreciation versus appropriation for 1920s and 30s fashion. Like, the era had a lot of fascination with other cultures, and there are ways to do that respectfully and ways to do that disrespectfully. And so we have little mini lectures on all of those, and then a vendor bazaar. So some of our great local vendors are bringing picnic supplies and clothing and just lost my thought. Picnic supplies, clothing, linens, everything that you're going to need to put together. Or even just like finding a couple of great pieces to kind of round out stuff you already have. And so I would absolutely encourage everybody to come to that. That is also described on the Art Deco Society of California.org website. Tickets are still available, and we'd love to see you.
That sounds so fun. I love that it's not just like, well, you better come up, you know, with your own attire and it's snooty. It's really not that energy. And it's great to hear that there's this preparation with these lectures of how to do it. And then if you guys, like, if you're like, okay, I know I want to go, my outfit's not just fully filling it. They even have pieces of clothing that you can get there to rent, like parasols or little pieces that, I don't know, are they doing that this year, Elizabeth, with the pandemic and everything?
We are not. The pandemic and the Dunsmore Estate restrictions mean that we can't have any vending on the premises, sadly. So please come to How to Gatsby so that all of the people who would be supporting the costume closet that we love to have, they're vending at How to Gatsby instead.
That's perfect. I figured that would be the case because I'm like, I don't know if they're doing that this year, but I thought it was just a really cool thing that if you feel like you didn't get it just right, there were even things on that day that you could rent and wear, and there were period pieces. And so that just kind of gives you the energy of what the event is. It's not this like club where you can't sit with us feel. It's not. And it just is, again, it's just one of those memories that you're going to keep with you forever. And I hope that you guys can both join myself and Elizabeth on September 12th. You can go get those tickets, you guys. I'm not messing around. If you love a good time, it's called this event, Gatsby Summer Afternoon. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Good to see you. I'm definitely going to come to those lectures. That sounds fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And to check out some of our previous Behind the Curtain episodes, you can check those out at redcurtainaddict.com and find out more about this event and some of our favorite highlights. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.